Welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Each week, we hear real time stories from athletes and CEOs on how to maximize performance through an endurance mindset. Let's get started. Well, welcome to the show. I am super excited about our guest today. He is a performance nutritionist, physiotherapist, and entrepreneur. He's got over 20 years of experience working with elite athletes and performance professional sports teams. He's the co-founder of the world's first training-based nutrition app to simplify the complex world of sports nutrition and help more athletes and individuals live healthier lives and perform their best. He is the co-founder and chief nutrition officer at Fuelin. Please welcome Scott Tindal. Scott, welcome to the show.
Greg, thanks for having me. Quite the intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's you've earned it, my friend. But as you know, I love talking about the endurance mindset. And so, Scott, I'd love to know how your endurance mindset has impacted your life unexpectedly.
Yeah. I remember when you asked this question, I had to think about it. And I guess I didn't get into endurance sports until probably closer to, I guess it's coming up 10 years now, but I feel like a relative newbie. But I think what it allows me to do and what the endurance mindset does is allow me to control the controllables. So my time, my energy, and probably my pain. And I know it's a funny one because I was talking to my partner about this and I was like, oh, I think this is how I'm going to answer the question. And I think there is an element of sort of administering pain on myself that I can control because and where I'm going with this is I have two children and one on the way. My oldest
Congrats.
boy, thank you. My oldest boy was born on the 12th of the 11th, 21, which is, as anyone will recognize, is a palindrome. And he was very normal up until 6 months. But we started to know that something wasn't quite right. And we saw a lot of opinions. A lot of people sort of passed it off and said, no, everything's completely fine. He's just a little slow with his development and whatnot. But we pushed and pushed, and then our pediatrician ended up doing a lot of genetic testing. And the long and the short is he came back with a very rare genetic disease, which is called SCN2A. And his particular mutation was actually the first of its kind ever recorded in the medical literature. So it's a bit of a weird one. It affects what's called the sodium channel or sodium channel protein in the brain. And it affects, it provides a lot of neurological conditions. And that ranges from severe epilepsy, where some of these children have sort of subtonic seizures every sort of 2 to 5 seconds. And they'll usually die very early on. Or they can have sort of very moderate to high level autism with intellectual disability, and that's more Jack's side. So they sort of have this spectrum, I guess, in terms of left or right, loss of function, gain of function. And I guess the endurance mindset has allowed me sort of it allows me to focus sort of at some periods of time on myself.
Scott, thank you for sharing that. My older brother was born with a mental handicap, and it probably took my family, my older brother, probably took 6 to 9 months in order for my family just to recognize it. And I think if the story is correct, it was my grandmother just noticed that he wasn't developing like the crawling or the rolling over and all these things that you expect. But to your point, it was very quickly, give it time, give it time, give it time. And it was my mother that kind of put the foot down and said, look, there's something where we got to get into deeper. And they found the right solution. And he's this wonderful human being now. But to your point about endurance and endurance mindset, like, especially as a parent, I'm a parent of 2 children as well. And it's like, you're almost hopeless, right? You're hopeless in that moment when you figure out that your child's on a different path than probably the majority of the people that he or she is going to interact with.
Completely. Yeah, it's an interesting sort of state to put yourself in, because I think you don't ever think your children will ever have anything wrong with them. And yeah, it's just a humbling moment. I think like you love your child no matter what. It's, I think, just a realization of what life is going to be like for them and for yourself and for your entire family. So it definitely, it'll be the longest run or longest bike ride or longest swim I've ever done, in terms of that analogy, because it's just going to be lifelong. Like, there is no cure for Jack unless, what we're currently doing is we've set up a charity, and the goal is, the cure for these types of conditions is gene therapy. You talk about CRISPR and gene editing and things, and that is the reality, and the technology is coming along so rapidly that there is hope. There's a big foundation. I mean, there's only 700 kids in the world diagnosed with SCN2A. So it's an extremely rare condition. But there is a very good foundation in America that does support this. And, I think there's 3 families in Australia with, we've met 2 of them. So it sort of, boggles the mind, I guess, in that sense. But, there's definitely hope, in terms of what you do. And I guess that's what the endurance mindset is. It's always, faith in the process and belief that if you're doing what is right, then the outcome usually looks after itself.
100%. It's got to be curious from the business perspective and your entrepreneurial journey. How has Jack's condition sort of impacted your personality, how you deal with your team, how you grow a business? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I'd like to say it's given me more patience. Maybe not all the time. I think it's one of those things, like, there's often times where you get frustrated and you're like, yeah, I believe this is happening, and I'll vent and things like that. And then it's like, my partner's very level-headed, and she will say, like, in the scheme of things, like, think about it. Like, does it really matter? And I think that's probably the lesson that I've learned. And yeah, you can become extremely frustrated over very small things, and I'm still guilty of that. However, I think the reality is when you take a step back and you look at the big picture, you're like, wow, yeah. Like, if that's the thing I'm really worried about, then I don't have many problems. And so, like, in terms of work, like, and I think it's in, like, everyone has their issues. And I think that's important as well. It's not like I'm like, oh, I'm the only one with issues. Like, I have a friend who broke his neck, like, sitting on he fell off a bar stool and broke his neck. And got one of my other best friends, he's got a child with a severe disability, high level epilepsy and sort of cerebral palsy type symptoms. And yeah, everyone's got their story. So it's not like poor me, but I think it's also important for those people who think they are going through a tough time as well. Maybe their children are giving them a headache because they are talking too much or something like that. And I'm like, Jack's nonverbal. He'll never speak. And it's like, I would give anything for him to say dad.
Oh, man, you're choking me up there. Where do I go from here? So let's explore Fuelin, and when did the idea come? I have tons of questions about the app and the technology and business and growth and that type of thing, but I'd love to go back to the day that you kind of discover that this was a need, or kind of like, when did this passion, this purpose kind of come to you that this is a product that needs to be out there in the market?
Yeah, as you alluded to, I started as a physio and then sort of did masters in sports exercise medicine, and I was working in a high level sporting sort of environments with teams, and then I became very interested in nutrition as a part of that masters, and then did postgraduate studies. And I think the reality is that every nutrition sort of expert that I came across, it was all PDFs. It was all very static. There was a lot of good theory. A lot of the great practitioners that have either taught me or I've worked with. Everyone, again, like, everyone knows what they should be doing, pretty much. Like, if you want to lose weight, you've got to eat less calories than you've got to expend more calories than what you're consuming, and so on. So everyone knows what they're doing, and you can get given all this great information, but it's the execution. And that's what it really comes down to, is like, can you actually deliver a program that is practical and simple for the athlete to follow? And So I think from there, rather than a static PDF, which was built on sort of theoretical framework, what I started doing was looking at athletes' training peaks plans. And
Mhm.
I was looking at them and then just effectively replicating that, but with colors. So with the colors that we use at Fuelin, so red being lower amounts of carbs, yellow being moderate, and green being higher. And so I would just put these colors into, it was a female athlete called Sarah Piano at the time, a professional triathlete who worked with Matt Dixon as her coach. And, she would have a Google sheet that I would update on a weekly basis, and that would take me sort of a few hours to do. And then, she was talking about it, and then some other athletes jumped on board. And, I was thinking, oh, okay, if I get 30 athletes, I can probably, make it, a fist of this. I can probably have a decent income, but it just wasn't scalable in that sense. Like, it was taking hours to do these programs. So then, it came from there. I mean, there was definitely a need. There was, I think what you call product market fit. From a small perspective, I met another triathlete. He's not a very good triathlete by his account, but his name is Jonathan Lee, and I was put in touch with him by Matt Dixon, San Francisco, and we hit it off. He was like, I think we can do something with this, and it sort of went from there. He sort of got me to dump on a Google page or a Google document sort of all the rules and everything like that, and then they started coding it, and that was sort of the beginning of the end, I guess, in that sense.
I I love the app, and what I truly appreciate that's different than others that I've used is the syncing to, like, when I enter my weight, it changes the plan. When I hit my targets on my training peaks from my coach, it updates my plan. Like, your imagination must go in many different directions as an entrepreneur. Like, where does the development stop, or where do you end up going down sort of like crazy little rat chases and thinking like, oh, this would be useful, and then you somewhat develop it, and it turns out that it's not wasn't very useful. I'd love to hear some of those stories of kind of that entrepreneurial curiosity. We thought of X and it really was a dumb idea sort of story.
We've been, it is a good question actually, because, like from a practitioner standpoint, I will be like, oh, we need this, we need that, like you'll go down the route of, okay, we need to integrate immediately with wearables because I think that's really important. But you have to take a step back and say, well, and I'm getting much better at this, is like, well, what are we going to do with that information? Because, yeah, look, at the end of the day, there are a lot of open APIs and we can do a lot of integrations. And a lot of athletes will say, like, when we do a questionnaire or a survey and we ask them what features would you like, connections to wearables always comes out. So everyone thinks they need it, but it's like, okay, now you've got the data. What are you going to do with it? And that's really, I think, the premise of what we're doing with Fuelin is everything that we present to you is hopefully practical and usable and will actually make an impact to you. So I believe we can do a lot with the data, say from like an Aura Ring or Garmin Sleep or a Whoop Band, but we don't need all that information. We need select bits of information. And then really the key is, how does it integrate or how does it relate to or correlate or cause, is there any causation between that and nutrition? And so that then takes on a much bigger project where you're now looking at these LLMs, you're using AI to actually look at all these millions of data points and then start to build the connection. So, yeah, doing one thing, the easy bit is pulling in the information. It's what you do with the information that then needs to be thought about. So then you pull back and you don't actually end up doing that. So, I mean, we've been, we've always, and I'm sure you've read The Lean Startup. I think pretty much every entrepreneur has, and that build, measure, test, learn sort of model. I probably got that wrong, but along that way, we've been very good with the leanness and the way we approach it. So we'll build something in that MVP state, get users to try it, test it. Okay, that's really good or that's really bad, and we'll push on. Generally speaking, our gut feeling, and I hate to use that word, the pun, but it's been pretty good. We haven't introduced features where people have been like, oh, this sucks, and we've removed it. I don't think we've actually, the only thing we've removed, which wasn't really a a decision that where we wanted to remove it, it was just because we rebuilt the app, and the company that was building the app with us, I don't know, they didn't put it in there. They forgot about it effectively. It was the subjective, what we call subjective wellbeing questions. So it was 5 questions we used to ask athletes every day. How they're feeling, their energy, their mood, sleep quality, and sickness, which for me as a practitioner is super important to see. The reality then is, from a business perspective, in terms of acquisition and revenue, it probably doesn't make that much difference. And so now you've got this balance where I want it brought back in, but then prioritization of other features. So what we're working on at the moment is what we call AI Meal Builder, where literally, based on your preferences, the meal, the time of day, it will now give you 3 options specific to your macronutrients, which is really cool. So you can say coach recommendations, so what we recommend, or you can go, what's in my fridge? You can literally say, look in your fridge and go, okay, I've got a can of tuna, some salad, tomatoes, and I don't know, some tomato sauce. And it will give you 3 options based roughly on those ingredients, which is really cool. Or you can tap the other button, which is I'm eating out, where are you? And so you might say, oh, I'm at Chipotle. And then it will give you 3 options based on your macros, based on your carb color for where you are. And when when I say it like that, you're like, well, yeah, I'd work on that feature rather than 5 subjective questions. However, those 5 subjective questions, if we use that information really well, again with AI, to say, and you say, actually, your energy is trending down over time. You've gone from a 5 out of 5 to a 4 to a 3 to a 2, and that's happened. And we look at your training volume and your intensity, and we say, okay, well, he's on a loss program because you're trying to lose weight. Actually, you know what? We're going to give him 300 extra calories on this day because his energy's been dropping, his sleep quality has dropped, and he's actually reporting that he's feeling a bit sick. Okay, now you're using those subjective questions to actually provide a practical impact for that athlete just by giving them an extra 300 calories. And so now you've got like a really static feature that could become very dynamic, which could have a massive impact on an athlete. And that's how my brain works with all of this. And obviously with a very small team, it's like, it comes back to prioritization.
Yeah, absolutely. Is the AI meal builder out yet, or is that still development?
It's in beta. I'm about to open it up to the Facebook group to say who wants to start to trial it. So it'll be, I think we'll open it up to like 20 users at the start and then 50, and then we'll just go from there. So we'll get you on that, don't worry.
Nice. I'll keep an eye out for it. And you brought up the Facebook community. That's another feature that's unique to you and to Fuelin. Can you talk to us a little bit, educate the audience of like what's the benefit of the community versus just bitching about your nutrition online so much?
Yeah, there's a lot of bitching. Look, I think it's important. I think nutrition is so personal that and this is the thing, I think the biggest difficulty with any of these nutrition apps that are coming out is that they will serve a purpose for a vast majority, but also a vast majority, unless you nail it and keep it super simple and practical and that they can implement it into their life, they will just drop off like every other sort of app. And so I think the human element of what we've really tried to integrate into Fuelin is important. Now, you can be on, autopilot, which is just go for it without communication, or you can have the co-pilot where, you can chat with a coach every day if you want. And I mean, I always think like if you were someone who actually wanted to get the most and learn a lot about nutrition, then the co-pilot program's a no-brainer. I mean, annually, if you pay on an annual basis for $34 a month, you have access to coaches who've worked with world champions, Olympians, and you can ask whatever question. I mean, how much how much do you get charged if you go and have a 1-hour consultation with a dietitian or a nutritionist?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it that way, it's $200, 250 for 1 hour, and from that you'll get a PDF. And that's the irony is like, yeah, people will go, oh, it's too expensive or something like that. And you're like, literally for the price of 1 hour, you get a whole year every day. You can ask any question. I think that's pretty good value.
Yeah, it's a huge value.
So, but back to the Facebook group. Yeah, look, I think I would like to see it be used better rather than just, hey, tell me why this isn't working, or, I've got a question about my program. I would like it to be more, and this is probably on us as coaches, is like share research papers which are of interest, or share the podcast episodes and people comment on that, or ask questions around, hey, I heard you talking about this in the podcast. Can you explain this more? And create conversations around that. I think, unfortunately, in the era of where we are as human beings in society, is that everyone's a keyboard warrior and is very quick to complain. And then you go through an explanation and they're like, oh, okay, I get it. I didn't realize that. And it's like, that's all right. Just like calm your farm and just relax a little bit. And that's the other thing is, and coming back to, what has Jack taught me? It's just relax. I mean, it's nutrition. We're not doing brain surgery here. Like, guys, you're talking, I mean, you've probably read some of the gun. People are like, oh, I scanned the barcode and it was out by 2 grams of protein and 3 grams of carbs. And you're like, so what? Like, that doesn't matter. Does not matter, people. Like, nutrition is about what you do consistently. It is what you do consistently well. Now, it doesn't matter if you have one day where you have a pizza. Okay, if you do a pizza every day, it's probably going to have a pretty negative impact. But if you have a pizza every now and then, it doesn't matter. You might go over your macros one day, but there's so much error. And I mean this in the nice, there's so much error even within tracking, and we all acknowledge that. But if you can educate yourself on the trends and what you are eating on a daily basis, you will see results over time, even if there is some measurement error there. And I think that's what's lost on a lot of, I think the type of person who complains a lot is the person who probably jumps between programs a lot and doesn't actually stick to anything consistently. And if you dove into it, that same individual probably changes coaches quite regularly, or doesn't stick to the training program, or argues and says, oh, I don't want to do that training. Why should I do that training? No, I need to do this training. It's like, well, you know the answer to everything. You should just coach yourself. And that's
Well, and to your point, Scott, it's the habits, right? It's the consistency, it's the habits, it's the, you're in the middle of a 10-mile run and you're at mile 6 and you're near your car and you're just like, you know what? Maybe I'll just call it short today and take my shoes off and go home.
And that's the endurance mindset. It's like you have to start to get into the why. And the why, I always talk about the why with nutrition. We used to, when it was very small, when we had, when I was working just with 30 people and I'd talk to them every day and all that. I'd always start with, ask yourself why you want to do this and why is nutrition important. And it's not to lose 5 pounds of fat or have a 6-pack or run a good marathon. Like, that why, when you get through, and it's called a click-through exercise, you ask why and they say, well, I want to be healthy. And you're like, why do you want to be healthy? And it's like, well, I want to live for a little bit longer. And it's like, why do you want to live longer? And it's like, well, because I want to be around my family. And it's like, well, why do you want to be around your family? And they're like, and you're like, well, why do I want to be around your family? And they're like, because I love them. And you're like, bingo, there's your reason why. Because you love your family, you want to be with them. So stop eating the burger every day. Start making your own lunch, your own dinner. Start doing the training that you keep telling yourself you need to do. Start going to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock and waking up after 7 or 8 hours sleep rather than 5. Stop drinking every night. Like, it's all the things that you've got to sit back on and go, why do I want to do this? And that deep-seated why, honestly, for most people, whenever I do it, and I've brought many men and women to tears by just doing that click-through exercise, that 5 or 6 questions, it always comes back to their family. comes back to their
Yeah.
kids, it comes back to their husband or wife because they love them. And that's a really powerful why. And when times are tough and you're like, oh, I don't feel like doing it, just come back to the why. And you're like, oh, I can actually do this. It's not that bad.
Scott, you mentioned, and you got me thinking, asking myself those 5 whys now, and I'll get off that track for in a minute. But you mentioned sleep, and it's something that I haven't thought much about as it relates to nutrition and the quality of sleep you have. Could you educate us a little bit on how nutrition impacts your sleep quality of performance?
Yeah, sleep's fascinating. So I think what is commonly accepted is that sleep or poor sleep, either poor quality or poor duration of sleep, probably more duration as much as anything, is going to negatively impact nutrition. So when you have poor sleep or limited sleep, your brain will seek out like a hedonistic sort of behavior. So it will search for foods that make it feel good, make you feel good. So what is that? It's going to be fatty, salty, sugary foods. And so that's what's going to happen. So you know it. If you have a bad night's sleep, especially if you've had a few drinks the night before, you've been out late, what happens the next day? You search out the burger, the pizza,
Hmm.
maybe a can of Coke, something like that. And that's what can happen with repeated poor quality sleep and poor duration sleep. So that's what a lot of people focus on. What a lot of people don't focus on is that bi-directional relationship. So actually having good nutrition or poor nutrition the other way can then impact sleep. So it can also impact duration of sleep and sleep quality. So if you're eating pizzas and burgers and poor quality nutritionally, it's lacking that nutritional density in terms of micronutrition density, and maybe it's too much of a caloric density, then that can reduce sleep quality and reduce sleep duration. On the flip, we know that high consumption of fruits and vegetables has a positive correlation to improve sleep quality and sleep duration. And that's really cool that, okay, you're always told eat a lot of fruits and veg. And that's probably like you're told, oh, well, it gives you lots of micronutrition, but you're never told, oh, actually, that can have a really positive impact on your sleep. And the timing of those, even things like protein. So your protein in consumption with carbohydrates. So carbohydrates in the evening can actually improve your sleep quality. Whereas a lot of people will go, oh, don't eat carbs in the evening. It's going to make you fat, which is, again, absolute rubbish because it just comes down to energy needs. So thinking about the quality of your food and what you actually eat on a daily basis and maybe even around meal timing in the evening could have a positive impact on your sleep. Alcohol, really easy thing in terms of alcohol is nutrition. It sits in the food and beverage category. You drink one drink in the evening, it will have a negative impact on your sleep, 100%.
Hmm.
And anyone who's worn a Oura ring or a Whoop band, they'll show you. They'll show you straight away. If you have more, especially if you have more than one drink, and especially wine, I mean, it just plays havoc with your resting heart rate, your HRV, and your body temperature. And so it's for me, it's very clear nutrition has that two-way direction. There's more and more research being done now on nutrition's impact on sleep as opposed to just sleep's impact on nutrition.
That's fascinating. That's really helpful, and I appreciate those insights, Scott. Um, Another insight that I've been picking up from your Instagram feed is so I do long distance triathlon, and for 10 years now, and at the beginning, I basically focus on nutrition on race day. Like, what am I going to take in? What am I going to burn out? And it's all sort of at the beginning like gel oriented and et cetera. And had a bunch of GI issues like we all do, and we've gotten past that. What I've been learning more recently, and this was sort of just by happenstance, is what and when time of day I eat the day before a race has a huge impact on the morning and the ultimate performance. And then what I've been learning from your Instagram posts, it's not just the day before, it's like almost the week leading into a race. And I'd love for you to, another educational moment for our audience, like talk to us about the importance of the right nutrition leading into, let's say, a 140.6 mile race?
Yeah, you touched on the start. I think the biggest mistake a lot of athletes make is just focusing on race day as well. They're like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to eat, but they forget about practicing that in the build up throughout all their training weeks. And it's like what you eat in training, especially in those race pace sessions, is ultimately going to be your race fuel. And I think that's a big focus on what we do with Fuelin. It's always that aha moment with athletes as well. They're like, oh my God, I didn't realize that what I eat and drink in training is actually going to be my race fuel. Again, I come back to the PDF. Like, people often ask us, oh, can you write me a race fueling plan? And I'm like, yeah, I could do that, but it's a complete waste of time because it's theoretical. I could tell you, oh yes, you need to eat 90 grams of carbs per hour and you need to drink between 1 and 1.5 liters of fluid on the bike, and on the run, I want you to try and target 60 grams an hour. It's like, that's just numbers. And it's bullshit numbers, to be honest. Like, people, you need to understand what your carb capacity is. So we call it carb capacity. What is it? The amount of carbs you need per hour to have you pushing the watts that you need to do, feel great coming off the bike with plenty of energy, your legs not shot. In terms of hydration, understanding your fluid requirements based on your sweat rate versus what you can actually intake to allow you to come off the bike in probably a less than 1% dehydrated state. So that when you come to the run, you also know how much can you take in from a practical standpoint. Like, what gels do you like? Like, I could tell you, hey, Greg, use Morton or use Precision Hydration and have 3 of these gels per hour. And you're like, you do it on race day and you're like, I don't like these. They make me feel sick. And it's like, you haven't practiced that. So you've got to practice it. And I think it's when people get into Fuelin and they start to see, it starts to click and they're like, oh, I get it. Low intensity session and I can just have some sandwiches and some bars and eat some real food. I can have some trail mix. As long as I get the calories in, pretty good. Have some gels with it, maybe some drink. Great. Then it's the higher intensity sessions. You're like, no, this is go-to. This is go time. Now I'm practicing my race nutrition. They start to see that, and then they start eating around it, which ultimately is where you're getting to, is like on race week. Have you practiced that potentially in the build-up as well? Have you practiced like a carbohydrate load? A carbohydrate load, I know from talking to you, the experience of a carbohydrate load when you first do it is like, oh, wow. People look at Fuelin. We had this, you might have seen it on Facebook. One of the athletes would say, I had a time trial. It was only 20 minutes and you carb loaded me. And I was like, no, we gave you higher carb days, i.e. around 5 grams of carbs per kilogram. That's not carb loading. Carb loading is double that amount. And it's like this misconception of what is carb loading and what's higher carb. Carb loading, look, as an absolute minimum, 8 grams per kilo of body weight of carbs. And if you don't mind me asking, how much do you weigh in kilo?
170. I don't know in kilos.
170. So
pounds.
that's probably about 70 odd kilos. If you're up in around that 10 grams per kilo, yeah, you're up around 700 grams of carbs. And that's not 700 grams of weight. That's 700 grams of carbs. And if you think about that, it's probably getting up into around 15, as Jan said. He was talking about it. He's like, that's like 15 to nearly 20 cups of boiled rice. Like the equivalent. It is a lot of food to eat. And you need to practice that. You need to start practicing your race day breakfast so that you get to race day and you're like, I know what I'm eating. How many times do you hear athletes say, I don't know what I'm going to eat on race day morning? And I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah, or you're scrounging around the night before looking for the peanut butter sandwich that you should have thought about 2 days ago.
At 3 a.m, you're like going, oh, what should I eat? I'm about to do 12 hours of exercise. What should I eat? It's like, no. That is not a thought that you should have. It should just be autopilot. Like if you're eating overnight oats or if you're eating boiled rice, white rice with some milk and maple syrup, you know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly how much you're eating in order to give you that amount of carbohydrates to get you off to the best possible start.
That's awesome. Well, Scott, I could pepper you with questions for hours and hours and hours. How can an audience member get in touch with you?
Look, the easiest way is just probably connect through our website. So check out fuelin.com. We're also on Instagram, get Fuelin. And then if they want to reach out, they can send an email to coach@fuelin.com. And that's probably the three easiest ways to get in contact with us.
That's awesome. Thank you for your time today. Audience members, if you got some value out of our show, please share it with your community. Please like and subscribe. Um, let's get more Fuelin into people's hands. It's a remarkable app. I am a user for sure. But I do need a shift from the autopilot to the co-pilot so that I can keep peppering questions over the app. But anyways, Scott, it's been great having you on the show. Keep up the innovation, keep up the dreaming. Best to you and your family and your upcoming child. I'll be thinking of you for sure. And good luck in Sydney in a few weeks.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. To hear more inspiring stories and strategies around the endurance mindset, be sure to subscribe below or visit us at chiefenduranceofficer.com. Until next time, keep pushing those limits